Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, the local minister at the Prince George's Church of Christ, located at 7800 Central Avenue in Landover, Maryland. Today, celebrated especially around these United States, today is acknowledged as Valentine's Day. It's a day that acknowledges love, appreciation, the seriousness of relationships. And I'd like to do a series of lessons this week about understanding love language. Today, we'll simply spend some time defining love. According to Dr. Gary Chapman in his book, The 5 Love Languages, the emphasis is on the way an individual receives love from others instead of how an individual gives love to others. And there's a major distinction. There's a tendency for us to give love the way we want love, especially around Valentine's Day. There's a tendency sometimes for people to go out and buy chocolate because they like chocolate, but the person they are giving the chocolate to may not like chocolate. There may be a tendency to go out and buy 2 dozen of roses because the individual, the person purchasing the roses, like roses. But the person you're giving them to may like tulips. So what Gary Chapman makes the case for is that many times in communication complications, it might be because the individual is given according to how they've been accustomed to receive it. And that may not be the proper love language, the communication mechanism of the other person. Habits of communication over time, whether good or bad, are very challenging to extinguish. What an individual learns early in life is to receive from others their basic life survival needs. And I just came up with a few, such as from infancy, from birth, others are expected to feed us because we're infants. Others are expected to nurture us because we're infants. Others are expected to maintain our hygiene because we're infants. Others are expected to house us, provide a place of shelter for us. You know why? Because we are infants. Those are all of the things that we expect from other individuals because we are infants. Now, ironically, although every person has a need for each of those expectations, how they are prioritized within the person may vary from person to person. The need most important within an individual more easily converts into the assumed need that is most important to everyone else. So as we grow up, one child who thought the major need was shelter will conclude that everybody else's major need at the top of the need list is shelter. It's not a matter that shelter is not necessary, but for that other person at the top of that list, it might be nurturing. For another person at the top of that list, it might be expected that I need someone to make sure that I have the necessary food for somebody else, I just love to make sure that I have the most pristine bathroom. I get pampered with a spa treatment and on and on. But all of these are good needs. But the conclusion, sometimes mistakenly, is that the order that one individual has them is the order that every individual will need those languages. And believe it or not, that will create unnecessary communication problems. What type of love is inside the love language? Any of them, pick one. And we'll outline those not today, but tomorrow, very, very specifically. Nurturing love, what one expects from home. Friendship love is inside of every love language. What one expected as one who cares. We all expected friendship. Unconditional love is supposed to be inside of each one of those languages. What one expected as one who has faults. We all have faults, but we still have the expectation that with our faults, people will still unconditionally love us. We all have expectations that there should be at least one person who will care, who will be my friend. We all have expectations that there's at least one person in this world that's going to nurture us, like hopefully we were nurtured at home. So regardless of what that love language is, there is the expectation that within that language, there is a level of love that's being conveyed to the recipients. See, we can have others feed us and could care less about us. We can have other people to provide housing for us and they could care less about us, or provide for nurturing, but they could care less. And believe it or not, as we mature, we can sense when those needs are being given, but love is missing. It's almost like I'm going to do this like I would do it for an animal. I'm going to provide this because I just want you to leave me alone. It's like a beggar on the street. I could care less about the beggar. I don't really care whether they live or die. I don't care where they live. I don't have to say, oh, I feel sorry for you, but just take the nickel and go. In a relationship, a meaningful relationship, people can sense when individuals are literally just throwing them a bone to get rid of them. The Bible and love language. In the book of 1 John chapter 3, verses 16 and 17, hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us. And we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. But whosoever it is that hath this world's goods and see his brother have need and shut up his bowels of compassion for him, how dwells the love of God in him? See, John is an older man. He's lived a good life, a long life, a life in Christ. And now he's writing as a testimony. If we think we have a grasp on the love of God, then we must understand that God first had a full knowledge of what type of love we needed. God understood we needed nurturing. He understood that we needed to be taken care of as far as the physical need of food, clothing, and shelter. He understood we needed a friend that would stick closer to us than a brother. He understood also that we needed an unconditional love that would embrace us even in our brokenness or even with our faults. In the book of 1 John chapter 5, verse number 3, for this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. Well, a part of the commandment is that we learn to love each other. But that brings me back to our major premise. We must learn to love people in a way that they need to be loved. We must find out their love language. We already know ours, but we've got to find out what is the individual crying out for. And as individuals who are concerned about keeping God's commandments, then we learn the love language of the people that we're trying to bless. Let me invite you to come back tomorrow, and I will explain to you Gary Chapman's 5 love languages and how they are applicable to each of our lives. And you'll see there's no incongruency between what Chapman lays out and what the Holy Bible lays out. I will see you back in class again tomorrow. Don't be late and don't skip class.